We don't have our full quorum yet, but we are going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And we will jump over a few items that do require approvals. If everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will jump down to number 3, public input. Is there anyone that would like to speak today? Hearing no one, we will jump down to number 4, the Streetcar performance report for May, please.
Good afternoon, Brian Allen, Director of Streetcar. For the month of May, we had some issues with the shortage of operators. So the one difference is from our normal report is that for May we missed 101 trips. This was mostly on May 18th when HART in itself had catastrophe, and then it cascaded throughout the month. We made some changes to circumvent that in coming months. So far everything's been working out. That being said, our on-time performance was 99.95, and the only incident we had was the incident we discussed at the last board meeting where the pedestrian was struck at Central Ybor. She was transported to the hospital and had only minor injuries. Our ridership for May was 52,580. The year before was 22,288. A little lower than previous months. We only did 4.58 hours of extra service for Amelie. There was almost nothing going on during the month, so that would attribute to a good piece of that. And other than that, we had 115 wheelchair boardings. And as far as the maintenance goes, the only thing I'll like to report on is that the roof has been painted on the Bernie and everything is getting put back on it. So we're on schedule for an end of June completion of that. Does anyone have any questions?
I had a question. Where you had the incident, I had somebody also ask me about the interface of pedestrians at Centro Ybor. What is there a crosswalk with a signal? I don't remember what's actually there.
It's a crosswalk, but there is no signal there.
No signal.
Yeah,
so an operator, though, if somebody is in the crosswalk, would then yield to that pedestrian, right?
The pedestrians are supposed to yield to the street.
Even if he's in the middle of the crosswalk?
When the streetcar was coming up, the person wasn't in the crosswalk. She walked directly into the car.
I wasn't talking about that particular incident. But
no, if a person was standing in the middle of the streetcar track, the streetcar would stop.
Okay. Just wanted to get clarification on that.
Thank you. We will move down to number 5, legal and legislative reports. Please.
Yeah, as far as a general report, we really don't have anything to report, which should be good news. It's a general rule. We do have an action item which we will address, which I can address now or later.
I think we're going to wait for one more member to arrive.
No,
We're fine now?
We've got 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then we can go ahead and address that.
All right, thank you, Madam Chairman. We have an action item, which is a resolution involving a station sponsorship agreement between Public Supermarkets, THS, and the City of Tampa and HART. We have counsel for all parties have reviewed the agreement. What it basically does is provides for a sponsorship agreement with Publix that allows them to sign one of the stations with their logo, and it also provides them with additional benefits that they can put their logo, for example, on flyers and other advertisements associated with the streetcar. Again, all counsel for the parties have reviewed the agreement. It was negotiated rather heavily. Publix likes to work a pretty tough deal. So the bottom line is what the agreement provides for is the naming of a station stop for a term of 1 year in exchange for a payment of $30,000 to THS. Publix will have the right to select a name to be placed on the port of Tampa Bay Station Stop Number 5, located at 949 Channelside Drive. THS and HART will be required to install and maintain the signage, and the agreement is also subject to board approval by both the city and HART. Our recommendation is to go ahead and approve the agreement and the resolution. The next steps for the board, should they wish to take it up, is to go ahead and vote on whether to approve the resolution and the agreement. Happy to answer any questions.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
I had a question.
Oh, go ahead.
And I asked this question at the Finance Committee, but I'll ask it here. The question I asked was, how did we arrive at that number of 30,000? And what I was told was that represented the cost to HART or the city, I'm not sure who, but the actual cost of installing signage and so forth. I guess my question is, when I was back on the streetcar many years ago, we were looking for those endowment donations, or I should say those donations to enhance the endowment fund. Now I understand, of course, we don't have an endowment fund anymore, but are we not looking to enhance the revenues of the streetcar? Is that the current philosophy, or I'm just trying to get a handle on it, because we were definitely looking toward, if you will, making money on one of these endowment donations. So
Can somebody confirm that that actually costs $30,000 and basically doing it at break even? Because it doesn't make sense.
I was not involved in the negotiations. My partner, Clay Matthews, was, but Lee, do you have any insight?
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear the question.
Do you have any insight into whether the $30,000 number is actually all cost to HART and THS?
It pretty much is the cost of actually doing this particular agreement, and that's why it's only 1 year versus the longer historical endowments, sponsorships that we've received. And I think that's the way that it will probably go from this point forward, and that's the interest of the city as well, to have a larger type of sponsorship versus a smaller one. But this is one to kind of help the public who's opening a new downtown store with their grand opening on August the 15th.
mhm.
So once it expires, if they want to renew it, then at that point in time, I would certainly recommend that we ask them for money that could actually go towards the endowment.
Or I'm not sure we have an endowment fund anymore, but it could go into the revenues of the system. You know, we are blessed with this 3-year DOT grant, but at the end of that 3 years, we're going to be needing to sustain ourselves in some way, not that we can fully sustain ourselves, but, and I don't want to interfere. I think this agreement has been negotiated in good faith. I'm not trying to defeat that, and I'll vote for it, but I think in the future, we need to think about what kind of things like this we need to do to enhance revenues for the agency.
So I apologize. So I read this when I got it in the email, and I guess when I read license consideration, that my assumption was that there was a $30,000 benefit to the streetcar. So I don't. So I guess now the concept being discussed is the idea that we would break even on the signage, but have a streetcar system that's now branded for a private company, make no money on the bet that they may renew next year, and then that there would be a benefit to the streetcar. Is that the understanding?
That's my understanding of the
Okay.
basic concept.
I withdraw my second. I don't agree with that.
I agree. I'm withdrawing my motion. It doesn't make sense. Why would we do something for free?
Yeah, I mean, there's still staff time. It makes no sense. I mean,
Well, and out of $30,000 comes a commission as well. So I would table this until we could get some actual cost information.
And I'd further recommend that, we can go back to Publix and explain the sentiment of the board, and that the notion that while they're happy to support their advertising for the grand opening of their Ybor City store, we have to also, excuse me, consider our budget and revenue.
Yeah, I guess I would say if this is a 5-year program for $30,000 a year, but we're, spending the first year's payment to get the signage up or something, then bring it back and let's talk about it. But beyond that, I wouldn't even, as a board member, prefer to see a stop branded after a private company. If there's a benefit to the line, then great.
Yeah.
So, if I may, what I'd like to propose then is that we take a more comprehensive look at what the opportunities are for branding by streetcar stop as well as the line itself. Since this opportunity and conversation with Publix has evolved, there's been another entity that has come forward with some interest in one of the other streetcar stops. So I think a more comprehensive view at it to ensure that we're preparing ourselves for longer term viability financially would be recommended. So I can certainly work with staff in the city to advance those conversations. But purely from a marketing and co-branding perspective, to start out with, I know you brought up the ongoing operating cost of the of making the streetcar free, as well as the additional hours. That's probably a second conversation as far as a longer-term financial plan and financial strategy to keep the streetcar service as robust as possible. But I'll certainly work with staff and get back to you.
Thank you.
And perhaps it's time to have a marketing subcommittee meeting to kind of brainstorm on that.
Okay.
I would have envisioned that before we heard it through the Business Journal or the Times, that the board would have heard about the opportunity. But, okay, great, moving on.
Can I make a comment? I know I'm late in the game.
Please.
And sort of new to this committee at the moment because I'm an ad hoc. But I'm curious about how we marry this concept of sponsoring the stops and the current contract we have with, is it Media General, whatever it is? Because in the past, they've been able to advertise on the streetcar as well as on our buses. And we've been apparently taking some buses out of circulation, so I'm concerned that we need to make sure we stay in compliance with our contract with them, unless that's coming back up, because that generates revenue to HART as well. It helps cover our cost, it helps add to the revenues for operating, as well as other opportunities for shining our transit system. So while it's not really indicative of this is apparently separate from that contract, and every time we do that separately outside of out of that relationship, we may jeopardize our compliance in that realm, right? Is that a possibility? We would?
We do renew with Vector each year.
Is it Vector? Okay.
I mean, I'm not counsel to this board, but I would say that I don't think we're obliged to accept every contract that's offered to us. So I can't imagine that the media company could hold us liable or in default because we declined to accept some particular, for a good reason. I mean, and I think we do have a good reason in this case. And we haven't said we're declining it either. We're exploring the circumstances and so forth. So.
Excuse me, I'm with Vector Media, we're not involved with this process with Publix. This was directly done.
Oh, okay.
So
it wouldn't even impact that?
It wouldn't impact it.
Okay, thank you.
That's right, because you guys are not involved with the stations themselves, only for the wraps and the advertising on the vehicles. Yes. Right now, as of right now.
Yes.
Right. But there is talk of expanding that.
And also the $30,000 that.
You please join us up here.
Sorry.
Yeah, come to the mic and introduce yourself, please.
Dave Dukansky, Executive Vice President with Vector Media. Just getting back to the Publix, the $30,000, that isn't towards any of the production of the vinyl that's built out on the diagram contained in the board packet. So I'm not sure where that is coming from, because they've reached out to us, the people at Publix, and we estimated about $7,000 for the graphics that are required. And that's a separate payment, not associated with the $30,000.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we're really just looking for some more clarity on how that breakdown.
Yes, Madam Chairman, we will get for you what the breakdown of the costs are so that we can provide you with that information, because it may cast this in a slightly different light.
And if you would look at the prior station agreements that we've entered into, while I think they were all longer term than 1 year. And so you would consequently see a larger sum, but we should look at the proportionality of that, you know. Because they were larger.
We have all the documentation on that if you all want to see it, starting with like Tampa Bay Federal Credit Union. They did a 10-year agreement starting back in June 2003. It was $15,000 each period. Tampa and Ybor City Street.
What you
This
say
is
each period, what's a period?
They did 10-year agreements
Each year.
15,000 for 10 years?
for a renewal beyond, the initial agreement they did was 10 years, beginning in 6/11/03. It was $100,000 agreement for 10 years. Maybe that's the endowment.
Yeah, that was the larger number I was thinking about.
And Tampa Wholesale Furniture also had an agreement for the same amount, $100,000 for 10 years. Then we, HSBC and Bright House, Perpetuity, $250,000. SunTrust was $250,000. And then TECO was $1 million. This is just, if you guys want this documentation, we have it all.
Yeah, I think we are going to ask the staff to dig into that, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so.
While we're on action items, can we go back up to number 2, please, and approve the minutes? Do I hear a motion to approve the meeting minutes from last
Motion to
month?
approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Great, motion carried. All right, we will jump down to number 7, the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice President and Directors. For the record, Cindy Stiglich, Interim Chief Financial Officer as of yesterday, so I will stumble over that for a few days, I think. Today I'd like to present to you the tentative FY 2020 HART and THS streetcar budget. So these are the budget highlights I'd like to present to you today. Essentially, we're going to be going to FY 2020 with a flat budget from FY 19, and I'll illustrate that in some detail in subsequent slides. But essentially, when we went into FY 19, we were going in with an entire new service model based on some morning service and increased frequencies. Also not knowing exactly what the demand would be in light of a very generous offer for FDOT to allow us to offer free fares. So we will be continuing in the second year of those fares being free, using a grant from FDOT that was a 3-year service development grant for $2.67 million, which is equating to $890,000 per year. In April of this year, we had a new service model that allowed us to go to 15-minute frequencies in addition to continuing the morning service. I'll show you what that service model looks like on the next slide. And essentially, the ridership blew up. We had estimated what we thought was accurate amount of ridership for 19, and we've found that that is increasing exponentially. So this is what FY19 looks like, and what it will look like in FY20 will be the same service that we implemented on April 21st. And you can see that Monday through Thursday, the service level as far as hours go will be the same. However, the frequency has changed. So when we add frequency from a 20-minute frequency to a 15-minute frequency, that is the addition of one additional streetcar. And you can see that between the model that we're operating today, based on those service or revenue miles, hours, we're increasing a little over 3,500 hours per year. So I wanted to give you some key operating statistics. These are budgeted numbers for FY19. They are slightly different based on what we are currently trending to. We went into FY19 with the expectation of operating for a little over 20,000 hours per year. It's trending to be about 18.6 thousand hours per year, and the number of revenue miles is slightly lower, at about 108,000 revenue miles per year. The ridership was estimated at 500,000 trips, and as I've indicated here, right now that's annualizing to be close to 800,000. So I would show the combined HART and THS annual budget. For those of you directors that are new to this board, essentially when I say THS operating revenues and expenses, those are revenues and expenses that City of Tampa essentially is paying on the behalf of the Tampa Historic Society. We combine those into one operating budget. We operate the HART budget, and City of Tampa operates the THS budget. So I'll flesh that out a little bit for you in a subsequent slide. So this is what our annual operating statistics look like for HART. As you can see, our budget for FY19 was $2.5 million. Again, essentially a flat, barely a 1% increase, about $27,000. One of the things that I would point out here is that the primary difference is that we will realize about a $300,000 increase in salaries and fringes, while those other operating expense categories have been reflected down based on where we are currently trending. So we have been trending to spend this year about $2.3 million versus the $2.5 million. So I feel that based on the service level that we implemented in April, we will be able to recalibrate and go into FY20 with a flat budget, knowing that we have been increasing service in this last quarter. Oops. So the THS annual operating budget, the primary source of revenue here is the non-ad valorem assessment, CRA contributions. So that has gone up. When we get the preliminary estimate from City of Tampa, usually sometime in April, this is based on their preliminary assessment, so that's increasing about $60,000. This year, we are looking at our streetcar advertising a little bit differently based on the accounting that the City of Tampa would like to see, which is an increase in the revenue, but also having an offsetting expenditure rather than having just a net value budgeted. So you see an increase in the revenue and the advertising. They also have a commission that they're subtracting from that in the expense line. But if you look at this year's budget, it is an increase to the budget about $20,000. Where you can see the contribution to HART, after the increase in the non-ad valorem assessment and what we need to balance our budget, that's where the contribution to HART, again, an expense from City of Tampa that is used to offset any of our expenses, become an expense for them. So we don't double count that revenue. That revenue comes into City of Tampa, it goes out as an expense, and it comes into HART. So we don't like to show that twice. That's why the other slide had that negating the revenue, because you can't show that twice. So it's just the way in which we have to reflect our budgets. So based on the increase in the service that we implemented in April, we are estimating that we will need an additional 3 motormen for FY20. One of the other observations here is that we went into FY19 with 27 budgeted positions, but throughout the course of the year, we have added 5 positions, so you would effectually see a 10 FTE increase, but we've already kept and added the 5 in FY19, so we're only adding in FY20 a total of 5 FTE, and that's primarily in the mechanics or in the motorman. We added an administrative assistant, and I believe there was a manager position that was added as well that wasn't originally in FY19. So the next steps will be for us to again, refine and make any adjustments that we see between now and August, and come back to you in August or September at that board meeting and have you approve both the THS and the HART budgets by resolution. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to entertain.
Any questions? No questions, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. There is no chair's report today, so we will jump down to Mr. Benjamin Monroe.
Sure, thank you much. Just wanted to follow up in the board's direction to reach out to the city parking division to talk about the parking for the construction crews, as you recall at the last board meeting. Currently, the construction crew working on a few projects at Channelside and Beneficial Drive are using the empty land north of the arena for parking. As they work to develop this land, the parking is actually going to go away later this year, and they're currently looking at options. Staff met with them to suggest, though, that the streetcar could be used to move the workers to and from the site, which of course is ideal given all of the activity down there. Staff's going to continue conversations with the project management office over the construction crews, and we will report back. So just wanted to follow up on that. Moving on to the tie replacement at the June HART board meeting, we received an authorization to award a contract for the TECO Streetcar cross tie replacement project to R.W. Summers Railroad Contractor in the amount of not to exceed $1 million. The project's going to replace over 1,500 standard cross ties and 3 turnout tie packages in the ballasted track sections between 6th Avenue and Cumberland. Along the streetcar, funding for the contract is coming primarily from what's called a Surface Transportation Block Grant. So close to 90% of the project costs, or potentially 100% depending upon the final cost of the overall project. So regarding this, a lot of people ask me why, since the streetcar opened in 2002. There have been no major maintenance performed on the rail track bed or the ties. So in the past 17 years, the track bed and ties have been inundated with stormwater runoff. that can, foul the ballast and submerge some of the areas in compacted sand, mud, and other types of things. So this is fairly typical. That's it with that item. Moving on to the FDOT site visit. FDOT had a quarterly state safety oversight visit last week with the purpose of inspecting facilities. The visit last week also involved collecting some additional information for last month's triennial audit. We expect to have draft copy of the audit results next month, so we'll certainly keep you apprised of those as well. Lastly, finishing up with the Bernie, the roof replacement is wrapping up. The ventilators and roof walk and trolley poles still need to be installed as well as the remainder of the seat, so that's certainly an exciting project as well. And then the sales tax update. I'm sure many of you have been following this pretty closely. On Monday afternoon, the judge released his decision upholding expanded funding for public transportation in the region, and we're certainly very happy about that. As you know, 57% of the voters were very clear in their support of transportation funding, and really a formula that's going to support the needs of a best-in-class transit network, including an expanded streetcar network. So I and the entire organization look forward to working in partnership with the Board of County Commissioners to fulfill the overall taxpayers' vision. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. We'll move over to Ms. Lori Gage. Thanks for joining us today.
Good afternoon, Lori Gage, Market Manager and for Vector Media. And the most important thing we had today was, delving into the public's opportunity, because I know that they had a timeline. I know that we're working on another report. It was requested by the marketing department. I don't see it here, so we'll have to find out. Somebody was just asking for a new layout on how we provide information. Other than that, we've got new business pending or that's been approved that's upcoming is Grow Financial. They initially also wanted to do some station, some really creative stuff, but they pulled back. They're just going to wrap a car. The Lightning, Crown Royal's coming in, and then we've got space booked for Winter Express, which is the HART-sponsored Christmas car.
Wonderful. Last month you mentioned an interesting opportunity. Is that one of the ones?
That was the Grow Financial.
Okay.
Yeah, they were going to try to do some things at the station. So, but yeah, they decided not to. So, any questions for me? Dave got up here. This is my boss, Vice President. I'm visiting Tampa today. So,
Can you shed any light on why the Grow Financial didn't choose to move forward?
They didn't share anything with me, but that the Publix thing is very interesting, and if there's a way, a path, how do we go forward to potentially, do more interesting things at the stations? We're definitely interested in helping develop a program to do that. So what I think we should probably do is maybe, do some spec art and some spec pricing, and then we can come back to you and show you our ideas.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Thank
you.
Thank you very much.
All right, with that, we just have compliance reports everyone can read and review. Is there any old business? Hearing none, any new business? Also hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.